Hi, everyone. Well, I'm still away visiting. I won't be home probably till the end of this week sometime, so I want to try to get in a few more blogs if I can about acting. Uh, I did a blog last night and I was talking about the audition process. And of course, a big part of that process is the memorization of lines. And it's probably one of the most difficult things that an actor really has to do. Some people are fortunate. Maybe they have a photographic memory and they can see the picture in their head and just read the lines off as they go. But the danger with wording lines is that you learn them out of context. What you have to do is take the sides or the scene that you're given to memorize and first of all, read it from top to bottom a number of times. Read both parts and read all of the writer's instructions and keep reading it, maybe 20, 30 times. And then you want to sit back and you want to ask yourself, well, now it should come to you as you're reading it all these times, like, where am I in the scene, the physical location? Who am I talking to? And by the way, read both sides when you start, both your lines and the lines of the reader or the person that's going to read the scene with you. Find out where you are. Make sure you have a good picture of that in your mind. Find out who you are. Look at the instructions, in fact, that are given with the piece. They'll tell you whether you're going to be a policeman, whether you're going to be a nurse, whether you're going to be a doctor, whether you get the idea. And then in that context, you want to get a feel for the sides so you can picture yourself as you read the lines over and over and over again. Now, there are different ways to do this other than just reading the lines. You might want to find some software. Actually, Apple has an interesting software app. I think it's called Line Learner. That allows you to, in your voice, and you can alter the voice, read the lines of the other person so that when that is finished, you'll have your cue to say your lines. It's not as easy as it sounds, quite frankly, because again, you've got to get to the point where you're really not thinking about what you're saying. If you get out of the moment of the scene and get into your head trying to think of something before it happens or before you have to say it, then in fact you're probably going to have some difficulty. So the idea is fluidity. The idea is to picture where you are, who you're speaking to, and go with that. Now, there's going to be times when you're going to get a long piece of work, a monologue, or maybe, if not a monologue, certainly a lot of text. Sometimes you're going to get scientific text, which is really difficult. And there, you just have to look up the words that you are maybe not familiar with and make sure you understand what you're saying. The last thing you want to do is get into an audition and find out that the director's going to ask you about some scientific label that you're saying or word that you're saying, and he says, "Well, do you know what that means?" You're going to be pretty embarrassed if you don't. So you want to make sure that that's exactly a part of the understanding of memorization. Now, the other thing you want to do, because you want this to be as real as possible, every single line that you are supposed to read, you want to ask yourself, why is the writer asking me to say this? Uh, you'll be amazed at the discoveries that you'll come up with. There's a reason for every line. It's not just to fill space on the page. There's an actual reason for every line that the writer writes, and so you've got to try to find that. You've got to try to find that meaning for you. All right, that's what's important. you've got to understand exactly what you're saying and why you're saying it, and you've also got to some extent interpret what the other person is saying and maybe why they're starting to say it. This has a lot to do with what we call actions. You might be saying this line to provoke someone. An action is usually stated as an infinitive. You might use an action to love. There are a lot of actions that you might do to cajole, things like that. And you just want to try to find the action that you would want for that line. It is not a question that you're posing. It's, for example, if someone, was to say something that was supposed to affect you in such a way that you're expected to cry, like, I have some bad news for you. Your wife has died. You've got to know what, you've got to get from that what they're saying. If it's your line, you've got to give them some sense of why you're saying the line. So in that case, you'd be consoling or to console the person. And that's what you've got to have in mind. Now, I won't go into any more depth than that as far as the actions are concerned, but there's one other thing that maybe it's a little trick, I don't know, and I'm sure other people do this. I've never been a cop, but I've seen a lot of movies. And an audition that I had to do a little while ago, I had to be an admiral, a Navy admiral. And I thought to myself, wow, admiral, well, who do I know that's like an admiral? Well, I thought about a military guy, right? But I know a policeman.
Be good, be good. Oh.
Take care.
No pain, okay? No Natalia tonight.
No.
Oh, are you talking?
Yes.
Okay.
It's okay. Well, now I guess that's an interruption. I'm not going to change this, quite frankly, because it's going to happen more often than not. Anyways, that was the nurse, okay? So, so I just want to say, when you may not know anybody that's an admiral, but you will know somebody maybe who's a cop. And I, quite frankly, in this case, knew somebody who was a cop. And I just made the assumption that, well, a cop's a lot like an admiral. So I'm just going to act like him. Same air, same toughness, same authoritative speak, and so on. So I did. And the other thing was, I was supposed to be an admiral in a science lab looking at some unique thing that's going to change the world. And so I had to picture myself in this science lab. I'd never really been in a major science lab, but I kind of pictured one from school, believe it or not. And I thought, well, yeah, I can conjure up that image in my mind, Bunsen burner and all that stuff. And then, so I pictured myself literally in this room with familiar things. And this familiar thing was supposed to be in a certain spot in this room. So although I don't want you getting out of your head to do this, you've got to have in your mind that you've placed this spot and that you know where this spot is in the audition. And so consequently, what you're going to do then is have that in your mind, exactly where it is. So you're subconsciously thinking about where it is all the time. Now, you may automatically refer to it at some point, like, what the hell's that? I don't know. Or you may not, right? But you've got to have a position for it, because the one thing you can't do when you go to point to something else is you can never look down the tube or down the lens of the camera. It's just not good, to say the least. And you must, when in fact you are delivering your lines to somebody, you've got to look at the reader, right? So you see, with all of these things to do, you really have to know your lines very well, okay? And feel comfortable with them. Now, one last point You don't have to, in an audition, say them word for word. You may have to if you get the part, but you'll have a lot of time to learn those lines when you learn the part, right? Uh, for an audition, you just have the night to learn them, and then of course the audition the next day. So if you happen to use your own speech patterns, don't be afraid to even make some changes, in my opinion. This is my opinion. You can adopt it if you want or not. The fact is you can make those changes. So if your line was, he went through the door and across the park. If it's more comfortable you to say, he went outside across the park, or better still, he just went out the door and through the park, or to the park. Just use your own words to some extent. You try to learn them as they are. But if in the audition they just don't come right to you, you see, if you've learned what's happening and the motions and whatnot of things happening in this particular audition, then guess what? It'll come to you. It'll automatically come to you. It may not be anywhere near sometimes what was said, but you know something? The casting directors or producers that are in that are really looking to see how you deal with things as an actor, right? And they're not so concerned with you being word perfect in that case, okay? So I guess that's about it for tonight. I'll try to get another one out tomorrow. I apologize for the interruption, but hey, what can I say? There's another story there to be told, I guess, with my next blog. Thanks very much. You take care. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.